So welcome to DBL. We're going to start today with a topic that we know that we don't talk enough about, and it's definitely something that's affecting all of you at home as well as us, everyone. So first and foremost, are you sick and tired of paying more for just about everything that you're buying? Prices are up 9.1% over the past year. That is the highest in 4 decades. But what does that really mean? Well, if you've been to the grocery store lately, I'm sure you've noticed grocery prices have jumped 12% in the past year. So a pound of chicken is up 36 cents. Ground beef up around 50 cents. A gallon of milk is now almost 60 cents more. And even eggs are up more than $1. But it's not just food that's eating away at your wallet. Rent rose at the fastest pace last month since 1986, if you can believe that. So now there's one bright spot. Gas prices are finally falling just a bit, down 41 cents on average around the country. But if you filled up your car recently, you know that the gas prices are still crazy expensive. So a lot of us are asking, how long will these price hikes last? And is enough being done to stop it? And maybe most importantly, what is most to blame? DBL Nation always want to hear from you. Let us know what you think. Is it President Biden? Maybe the pandemic, the war in Ukraine? Or is it huge corporations hiking prices? Or could it be that the Federal Reserve, whose job is to keep prices steady? Which is it? Please go to dblvote.com. Let us know what you think. Jeff, what are you thinking?
I think it might be a combination of all of them. They said wrap it up already?
They did?
I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. No, but Tori, you mentioned the other day, like Biden, you were championing him for what he did for us in the pandemic, right? If you're going to champion him for what he did for the pandemic, you have to shame him for what's going on in our economy right now. It's something that we don't talk about. I don't know why everyone's talking about it. I did a lot of research. You guys actually put a lot of my stuff on there, but I'm going to read it anyway because I did the research. You mentioned chicken up 19%, gas up 60% in the last year, biggest since 1981. Electric up 14%. Wait till winter. Rent is up 5.8%, biggest since 86, you said. Jeff needs a raise. Who put that in there? Wages are up 5.1%, right? Biden hangs his head on that, right? So they're up, oh, wages are up 5.1%. Look what I'm doing for the economy. Yeah, costs are up 9.1%. So the math doesn't add up. Even though he's hanging his head on something, these are the true numbers that really matter. What's going on at the border, right? The fentanyl deaths from February of 21 to February of February 2021 to February 2022, 109 overdoses from fentanyl and synthetic drugs from coming through the borders, right? My mother's an immigrant. I'm not shaming immigration, but I'm saying these are things that we have to talk about and get under control. We have Trump in the news every day. That's fine. That's great. Let's get that under control too. But let's talk about other things. 109,000 overdoses, and we're not talking about things like that. Rents up, wages. It's just, there's a lot going on that people seem to ignore.
I want to just respond very quickly. I hear you, and I hear the pain of people saying, I got to choose between gas and dairy and milk and eggs. Like, it breaks down. And let me remind you, voters, that's all they'll care about at the ballots. That's it. But let me remind you, unfortunately, Biden only has so much he can do. I'm not saying he's perfect, because I sure don't think his message has been on point at all. But it is mostly the Federal Reserve, and he cannot touch that because of checks and balances. So he's kind of
giving away trillions of dollars during the pandemic. Whose idea was that?
I agree with you, and I don't
importing gas from Russia before the Ukraine. Whose idea was that?
Well, we have
the gas thing is okay.
We do have an expert.
I know, but we got to go, right? We get 30 seconds to talk about it. Let's talk about the facts.
Well, here's the facts, right? Because what really is going on, to help us get the facts on this, we are joined by the national host of TEGNA's very own Verify. So they are a team of fact checkers that help sort through all the misinformation. There's no opinion here, just facts. Please welcome Ariane Datil. Hey, welcome to DBL.
Hi, you said it perfectly.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for being here, because we need to know what's going on. So, Ariane, let's start with the basics here. What is inflation, and what are the facts about what contributes to these rising prices?
Okay, let's verify. And the way that Verify works, we start with our sources. And so we're going to use the Consumer Price Index, the Federal Reserve, and the USDA, as well as Gas Buddy, to talk about all of these aspects of inflation. So number one, basic, what is inflation? It's the change in the price of goods and services over time. And annually, that's around 2%. But like you mentioned earlier, it's 9.1% from June 2022 to June 2021. And that is what people are talking about.
So what have you found out about why we're seeing these sky-high prices at the grocery stores now?
Yeah, Jeff, this comes down to supply and demand. We're going to talk about that a lot, but I can break it down a little bit further. worker shortages, fuel price increases. That's the trucks that need to take your food from the supplier to the grocery store. The price of that is going up. And we have supply chain issues. When you factor in all of those issues, it leads to the price of goods sold going up, meaning you're going to see a little bit higher prices when you get to the grocery store.
That's fair. Let's talk about gas here, gas prices. What's causing all this pain at the pump? I know we went down a little, but people are really like, I can't even buy eggs. Like, talk to me.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about, is it the president? Is it what's happening abroad? It's all of those things. And I think that's what's hard for people to understand. The price of oil is based on a global market. So if something is happening in Ukraine or in Russia where they supply most of the gas to Europe, that's going to impact the price of gas here in the U.S. I'll break it down a little further. If Russia is supplying gas to Ukraine and Russia is supplying gas to Europe, and Europe decides we're not going to do business with Russia right now because they invaded Ukraine, then that means Europe needs to look for their gas elsewhere, which means now we're competing with them for gas prices, and those prices are going up.
That makes sense.
So it is a global economy, and there are many factors at play here.
Ariane, how do we protect the average American? For instance, I do feel like, and you even said, you know, all is to blame. So let's talk about how we look at the people that are barely, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, and now rent is up 5%. Right. You look at small businesses who are trying to fulfill demand, but then they go and they call their manufacturer, and their manufacturer prices are through the roof, so then they can't even supply the demand. Are there any laws that can be put into place to help protect us?
That's such a great question. And it doesn't come down to laws right now. It comes down to human behavior. And that is something that we can't fact check. You just don't know how anyone is going to react on any given day. But what I can advise is spending within your limit.
Right.
And knowing that rent prices, let's talk about that a little bit, because demand changed epically during the pandemic. You had people normally fighting to get into cities. They were trying to get out of those cities. And what did that mean? That meant rent prices in the cities went down and people were looking for bigger homes. But now that mortgage interest rates are going up, what does that mean? It's harder for people to afford to buy a house, which means now more people want to rent. And so it's really hard to predict consumer behavior, but spend what you have, don't spend more than what you have.
Wow. Let's see what our viewers have to say. They believe 40% believe President Biden is to blame, 41% big corporations, 17% the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, and just 2% to the Federal Reserve.